All right, that's my cue. So we'll go ahead and get started. We don't want to take up anyone's time. I'm sure everyone's got a busy day. Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. This is our grant help desk rotating topic. Today we're talking about writing a grant application. More importantly, the steps that go into completing the grant application process with DCEO. So we'll address some key items in this training. My name is Corinne Claycomb. I'm a technical support manager with the Office of Accountability at DCEO. I'm joined by my colleagues, my other technical support managers on this call. They will be monitoring the chat box. If you have questions during the training today, please feel free to put those in the chat box. We'll try to address those at the end of the presentation. And as you heard just a minute ago, this training is being recorded. The recording and the slide deck will be sent later on, hopefully today. So keep an eye on your inbox. You'll get a copy of all of this stuff so that you can review it whenever you need to. All right, so in this training, we are going to walk you through the entire grant application process, starting with where to find a grant opportunity, which we call a notice of funding opportunity, commonly referred to as a NOFO. You'll hear that word a lot, NOFO. We'll also talk about the steps you'll take to prepare for applying for a grant, and then we will share some important tips for writing your grant application, including the key points that applicants should address, which are outlined in that notice of funding opportunity. We'll talk about the required documents to be submitted with your application, where and how to submit your application package, and we will talk about what the merit review process looks like. Finally, we'll wrap up with some tips and resources before answering some of your questions. To apply for a grant, you'll first need to know where you can find notice of funding opportunities, or NOFOs. There are two locations where you can find grant opportunities. The first we will discuss is DCEO's Apply for Funding page. All right, maybe some sound issues, but I'll try to speak up as best I can, try to enunciate for you. So we're going to talk about the DCEO Apply for Funding page. Those are grants specific to the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. The second location we will check out is the Catalog of State Financial Assistance. We also call this the CSFA. So the DCEO Apply for Funding page houses grant opportunities that are exclusive to our agency, the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, DCEO. You can locate this page via the Grantee Resources page. You can also find it on the DCEO main website. And then you can also use the link that Caitlin has just provided in the chat box. On this page, you can browse program titles, including short descriptions of that program, and very important, the application deadline. You can click on a grant opportunity to access additional information. This includes funding source, where those funds are coming from, the person you can contact with specific questions about the grant program, and the approximate award range that can be expected. When you click on a grant title, you'll see a list of required documentation that is to accompany your grant as well. Well, they're going to discuss these documents a little bit later in the training, but please be mindful of these requirements when you are reviewing a grant opportunity. The second location that I mentioned is the Catalog of State Financial Assistance. This is the CSFA. Here you can browse grant opportunities across the entire state of Illinois. These are all state agencies, including the Illinois Department of Transportation, the Department of Natural Resources, the Environmental Protection Agency, and of course, many, many others. You can browse active programs and open opportunities. This page is searchable, which allows you to enter terms or phrases that are relevant to your interests and your objectives. So if you wanted to enter a word like education or solar or books, if you have terms like that in mind, you can search for grant opportunities that include those in that little search box there. And also, if you happen to spend your entire day reviewing the Catalog of State Financial Assistance and you still don't see a grant that aligns with what you're looking for, we highly recommend that you sign up to receive a weekly email about new grant opportunities. Caitlin has just put that email address into the chat box, and you can click on that link, that address link. You can copy paste it, send a blank email. to subscribe to that list. It's a blank email. You don't even need to include a subject line. You will only receive, as of now, 1 email a week. It's on Friday. It will include all new grant opportunities. So even if you don't see one today that you like or that you're interested in, keep an eye on your inbox as those alerts come in, because you will be made aware of new opportunities that may just be perfect for you. So we highly recommend signing up for that email list. And it's only 1 email a week. It won't flood your inbox. So there's also a list of active grant opportunities and active programs on the CSFA. You can browse projects that are currently accepting applications. You can click on a grant program title, and there you can view additional information such as the funding amount, again, that program contact, that person that you can email if you have very specific questions about that program. And this is also where you can download the full Notice of Funding Opportunities supplement. This is the document that contains word for word everything you need to know about that grant program. So now we're going to just go ahead and dive in to how to read a Notice of Funding Opportunity. The structure of a NOFO is uniform. However, the contents vary from program to program. Are you going to go over how to do the financial? We're going to talk a little bit about the budget, but just we'll get through more stuff as we go. But the important point to make here is that the Notice of Funding Opportunity is extremely important, and it's a tool that you should use. It should be your best friend as you complete your grant application. It contains extremely important information. So let's just go ahead and walk through the different sections of the NOFO and what that looks like. Part A of the NOFO will discuss the intent of the program. Here you're going to learn why the state agency bookmarked these specific funds and the desired end goal. So things like maybe what community will this benefit? Who is this to serve? What industry would benefit from this grant program? If there's a history attached to the grant program, you'll learn more about it in this section. For example, if the governor's office announced a new initiative early in the year, this section will discuss what that initiative is and the events that took place to set it in motion and how this grant came to be. This is also going to tell you what the grantee can expect, what will be expected from the grantee on the back end in terms of performance. If you believe you will not be able to attain the goals that are outlined in this section, it's important because you may want to reconsider applying for this or plan on how to better prepare yourself in the future. Reading about the program can kind of help you determine, will you be able to meet these goals? Are you prepared? Maybe you need a little bit more time. Things like that. Finally, the program description covers the performance goals and measures of the opportunity. This will outline the objective of the program, what is expected of the grantee, and how success of the grant is going to be measured. Part B is going to address where grant funds are coming from. So this means which office, which state agency, maybe if the grant is federally funded. Part B will indicate the projected start date of the grant program and the span of time that the grant will be performed. This can vary from program to program. The section is going to explain the project amount that the applicant can expect to receive and whether there are supposed to be multiple awards. So for instance, let's say the entire grant program is for $5 million, but we see that they intend to award between $100,000 and $200,000 per grantee. This can kind of give you an idea of how competitive this grant program will be, how many awards they plan to give out. Finally, an important item to review is pre-award and application costs. This section is going to address whether the grantee is allowed to start spending grant funds before actually receiving grant funds. It's really important to review this section. We refer to this as pre-award costs. So take special care and time to note this pre-award section in order to verify if pre-award costs will be included or not included with this grant. So all of that stuff is good to know ahead of time. Part C is eligibility information. Here you'll see information about pre-qualification. Pre-qualification is required to apply for and receive grant funds. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. And this will also cover what types of organizations are eligible to receive the award. It's really important to review this section thoroughly because If you are not eligible for the award, it's good to know that early on because this can save you from taking the time and the effort to complete an application package for a program that you may not be eligible for. So take the time to review this section, think it over with your team, and make a decision from there. Part D of the Notice of Funding Opportunity is application and submission information. I want to note that not one of these sections is more important than any of the others, but this is going to tell you how to submit your application, where to submit it, when to submit it, all this other information. So starting with the program contact, this is your point of contact if you have very specific questions about the grant program, such as I didn't see this listed under allowable expenditures. Can I spend money on this? What happens if I already have that? You know, questions like that. The grant or the program contact will be able to answer those really specific questions about the program. Content form and application submission. This part outlines what additional required documents are to be submitted with your grant application. We're going to talk about these a little bit further on. We'll go into more detail about those other required documents. So hang tight for that. Also, you will see where and when to submit your application. Important thing to note, the deadline listed in this section is a hard deadline. If the deadline says it's your grant application is due on Wednesday, May 15th, 2024 at 5 p.m. If you submit your application on Wednesday, May 15th, 2024 at 5:01 p.m., the applications are time-stamped, and those that are submitted after 5 p.m. are not going to be accepted. So keep in mind that is a hard deadline. Don't start on your application at the last minute. This won't work out for you because, as we can see here, there's a lot of things to consider, a lot of ducks to get in a row. So start planning well in advance of that application deadline. Just really important to know that. Also included, if an intergovernmental review is applicable, it'll be addressed in this section. And this piece will also cover if there are restrictions on how funds are to be spent. If there are other submission requirements, they'll be covered here as well. So this section of the NOFO addresses exactly how the grant application and its supporting materials are to be submitted. So pay very close attention to this section to avoid the possibility of submitting something in the wrong format, to the wrong place, at the wrong time, or without the required documents. Part E, application review information. This is going to demonstrate how the application materials are to be reviewed and scored. This section addresses exactly how your grant application will be judged, and you are encouraged to use the criteria outlined in this section to help build your application. This will tell you exactly what points you need to touch on. If there are specific restrictions based on items, such as region or minimum score, this is going to tell you that that's going to be a part of the review process. Here you'll also find what you can expect, when you can expect that award announcement. But please note that the time for reviewing applications varies from program to program. Some grant programs receive maybe hundreds of applications, whereas some grant programs can receive up in the thousands of applications. And so each one of those needs the time and the care for review. So it can take a long time to get through the whole review process. But please keep in mind that whether or not you've been chosen to receive the award, you will be notified once that review process is over. The Grant Help Desk, we receive questions sometimes asking if they missed an email, maybe I haven't heard yet about this program. If you've not received an email, that's because the program is probably still under review. So please be patient with that. But regardless of if you receive the award or not, you will be notified. So this section is important. Please review that thoroughly, as with everything else. Once the review process for applications is complete, those awarded are notified with a Notice of State Award. We also call this a NOSA. If there are any administrative or national policy requirements, they'll be covered here as well. Finally, once the grant is awarded, the grantee will be required to complete regular periodic reporting. They will be subject to monitoring, and they will be required to complete an annual audit for every year in which they have an active grant award. Your eventual grant agreement will also address these items, but this section is where you can get an idea of what will be required of you once you accept that state award. when you receive a grant agreement and you sign it, that agreement is a contractual agreement between the funding entity, the grantor, and the recipient of those funds, the grantee. So when you sign that grant agreement, you're agreeing to fulfill all of these requirements. So the last couple of sections, state awarding agency contact information, you'll find contact information for the state that is providing the award. And if there's any other information that's applicable, it will be listed under Part H, other information. Okay, so before you can even apply for a grant, you need to be registered, and you need to register yourself and your organization in the GATA Grantee Portal. GATA stands for Grant Accountability and Transparency Act. This is landmark legislation that increases accountability and transparency in the use of grant funds, while also reducing the administrative burden on both state agencies and grantees. And this is through the adoption of the federal grant guidance and regulations codified at 2 CFR Part 200, or uniform requirements. We just put the 2 CFR 200 into the chat box. It's really helpful information. It's searchable. If you have questions about what's allowable, what does procurement mean, all of that stuff is addressed in 2 CFR 200. So it's a really good thing to just have bookmarked if you plan on getting into grants. So back to the grantee portal. The grantee portal is a centralized system for grantees where you can complete required reporting, such as your audits or assessments, like risk assessments. Those are annual. Within the portal, grantees can manage organization access. So if you've got multiple team members who need access to the GATA portal, you can manage that within the portal itself. You can find contact information for your cognizant agency. A cognizant agency is the state agency that's provided a majority of your grant funds. However, a cognizant agency can be assigned to you based on other criteria as well. But this is the agency that you'll contact if you've got some big questions about your program or things like that. Within the GATA portal, you'll also elect your indirect cost rate. It's through the GATA portal that you will accept notices of state award. And importantly, you can review your pre-qualification status in the GATA portal. So the GATA portal is at grants.illinois.gov/portal. So you can go there to begin the registration process. We're also linking you to the GATA new user guide. This is a PDF document that provides step-by-step instructions on how to register yourself and how to register your organization in GATA. It's really helpful. We refer to it all the time. We usually send it to people who are curious about grants that want to get started, and we say, oh, get started with GATA. So the GATA new user guide link is in the chat. So if you are applying for a grant, you will start by visiting grants.illinois.gov/portal, where you can click create an account. Once your individual user account has been created, you will return to GATA to either begin a brand new registration for your organization if they're not already in GATA, or you will request access to your organization's portal if they are already set up in GATA. The GATA new user guide will address how to do both of those things, how to register a brand new organization or how to request access to an existing organization. We also recommend checking out the grantee portal frequently asked questions. This can be insightful as it addresses common sticking points or problems that other grantees have encountered. So again, that's a resource that we refer to quite a bit because we find it to be really helpful. And then finally, at the very bottom of the page, there is a GATA learning management system. In partnership with the University of Illinois Springfield, DCEO now offers a self-paced learning course on navigating and using the GATA grantee portal. When you visit GATA, grants.illinois.gov/portal, you can click this link down below to access that learning management system. All right, so as I mentioned in GATA, this is where you're going to be able to view and manage your pre-qualification status. So what does pre-qualification mean? The state of Illinois has defined a set of requirements for all organizations seeking to receive grant funds. If you wish to do business with the state of Illinois, grantees have to meet these requirements to be deemed qualified and in good standing. Pre-qualification demonstrates that your organization has met all legal requirements, that you've obtained all the necessary registrations, and that there's a proven track record of compliance. Your organization must first be deemed pre-qualified to obtain grant funding, but then you have to maintain that pre-qualification status throughout the entire lifespan of your grant program, or if you wish to continue to apply for and receive grant funds. That can be managed in GATA, your pre-qualification status. You can view it and address items that need to be addressed. We also have a video tutorial on pre-qualification that can be really helpful. That's available on our grantee resources page in the video training and resources library. We'll link you to that later on in the training. Our office also offers a monthly pre-qualification training. So if you've not joined us before for that, it's the first Wednesday of every month at 9 a.m. We talk about pre-qualification and we answer whatever questions you may have about pre-qualification. So we'll link you to more information about the trainings we provide later on in the training. So let's start with SAM.gov. SAM.gov is a system for award management, and you need to register in SAM.gov if you plan to do business with the US government or you plan to apply for federal grant awards. Through SAM.gov, you will receive a unique entity identifier. This is also referred to as a UEI, which is a 12-character alphanumeric identifier. It's used by SAM and other federal government systems to identify a unique entity. So registration in SAM.gov, once you've completed it, you'll need to return and renew that registration annually. When you are completing your initial registration, you'll be given the choice to set your account to public or private. Illinois Administrative Code requires grantees to set the account to public. Public registration means that when your registration is renewed annually, the updated registration expiration date will automatically populate in the GATA portal. This will make it a lot easier for you to maintain your pre-qualification status under this category. Accounts that are set to private, instead of updating automatically in GATA, you'll need to provide proof that your registration is active annually. That proof will be used when we manually change your expiration date by contacting the Grant Accountability and Transparency Unit. It's really easy if your account is set to private to forget that your registration is about to expire. Or if you renew your registration, SAM.gov and GATA don't communicate with each other. So if you're set to private, GATA doesn't know that you renewed your registration, so it's still going to show as expired in GATA. So set it to public. It makes it really easy to stay in compliance with this requirement. I also got a note in the chat. Please note that SAM.gov registration is free. Only go through SAM.gov to complete your registration. We've received emails before where we've been asked, how much does registration cost? I heard it can be something like $500. It's not $500. It's through SAM.gov. Registration is free. Please keep that in mind. There are different websites out there that will offer to help you with registration, and they may not be exactly legitimate. So SAM.gov, free registration. Please keep that in mind. All right, so back to public accounts. Why they're better than private accounts, why they're required. Public accounts are searchable and viewable in SAM.gov by people like myself, technical support manager. So if you email us and you say, my SAM.gov status in GATA doesn't look right, what's going on? We can go into GATA, and we can go into SAM.gov, get your registration is public. We'll be able to find you and help identify what's going on with your registration status. We can see if maybe it's expired. We can see if maybe you haven't completed the full registration process. It's just going to make it easier for us to help you if your registration is public. Finally, it's also really important to note the difference between simply signing up in SAM.gov and receiving your UEI or completing your registration. There's two different things going on. So let's take a look here. Oh, okay, never mind. Signing up with SAM.gov will provide you with your UEI, your unique entity identifier, but it doesn't mean that you've completed the full registration process. Registration requires TIN and CAGE code validation. It requires validating a lot of other important information. Completing and validating your registration can be time intensive. It can take SAM.gov up to 15 business days to validate your entity and to make your registration active. That's why it's really important to get into SAM.gov and get these wheels in motion early on. SAM.gov also has a service called FSD. That's the Federal Service Desk. It's a help desk, kind of like the services that we provide here at DCEO, and they can help answer questions. They've got a lot of how-to guides, like step-by-step instructions on how to complete things. So on SAM.gov, there's a little button that says help. If you click that, you'll be able to go to the Federal Service Desk and take advantage of all those great resources that they have there. All right, moving on. Your federal employer identification number, also known as a FEIN, this is required. A valid FEIN is required for pre-qualification status. This number is also used to identify a business entity. The IRS provides FEINs free of charge. FEIN applications can be submitted online by fax or by US mail. The time frame for receiving your FEIN based on how you submitted your application. So obviously, if you sent your application via mail, it'll take a little bit longer, whereas if you submit it online, it will be a little bit quicker. Okie doke. Once you enter your FEIN in the GATA portal, it'll be automatically verified. And there's something called a FEIN lock list. A grantee can be placed on the FEIN lock list for non-compliance, such as delinquent reporting, like you didn't finish your audit on time or at all. FEIN lock means that the grantee can't execute or modify a grant agreement with DCEO or receive grant funds from DCEO without written and approved justifications. Any grant disbursements that are to be made to the organization from the awarding agency will be blocked until that non-compliance is fixed. The next item is the Federal Excluded Parties List. This identifies entities who are excluded from receiving federal contracts, subcontracts, other types of federal or non-federal financial assistance or benefits. Exclusions can be referred to as suspensions or debarments. You are placed on the Federal Excluded Parties List for non-compliance, and you won't be removed until certain conditions are met or until issues are remedied. Organizations on this list are banned from doing business with any federal grant for an indefinite period. But the Federal Excluded Parties List is available and searchable also on SAM.gov. All right, to do business with the state of Illinois, entities must be registered with the Illinois Secretary of State and obtain a certificate of good standing. The certificate of good standing just demonstrates that the organization exists and that it's in compliance with all state regulations. You can register with the Secretary of State at illinoisilsos.gov. We've put that link into the chat box. There's a special section on this website specifically for business resources, and this can help organizations obtain that certificate of good standing. But as you can see on the screen, please note that this requirement applies only to corporations, not-for-profit corporations, limited partnerships, limited liability companies, and limited liability partnerships. And very important part of pre-qualification is the Illinois Stop Payment List. This list includes entities who have been found to be non-compliant with their grant agreement or grant policies. These organizations cannot receive grant funds or execute or modify a grant agreement with any state agency across all of Illinois. Most of the time, grantees can remediate that non-compliance issue and they can be removed from the Illinois Stop Payment List. In those instances, they're placed on Illinois Stop Payment in temporary status. It's temporary. We just need you to comply with different requirements to be taken off of that Illinois Stop Payment List. But if an issue is very serious or fraudulent in nature, with due process, the grantee will be placed permanently on the Illinois Stop Payment List. You'll see in GATA, there is a help button located next to pre-qualification and all the other items that you can see here. Just a second. Gotta pop up. There's a help button in GATA. So if you click on that help button, like if you're shown as on list under Illinois Stop Payment, click the help button. That will address who put you on the Illinois Stop Payment List, and that's who you should contact to figure out how to be taken off the Illinois Stop Payment List. So if DCEO was the entity that put you on the Illinois Stop Payment List, then you can contact us at the Grant Help Desk, and we can get in there and we can try to figure out what the issue is and provide some steps or connect you with the right person to ensure that you're taken off of the Illinois Stop Payment List. All right, our last item, you cannot be on the Illinois DHFS sanctions list. DHFS, the Department of Healthcare and Family Services, they have the authority to impose sanctions on entities and individuals. Those organizations on the Illinois DHFS sanctions list are not eligible for Medicaid reimbursement. The sanction placed on the organization is the result of administrative action taken against the organization in question when they're found to be in violation of administrative rules, civil law, or even criminal offense. Types of sanctions can include suspension, termination, barment, or exclusion. All right, so before you start writing that grant application, you will need to review the criteria that's outlined in the Notice of Funding Opportunity. As we mentioned earlier, the Notice of Funding Opportunity will contain absolutely everything you need to know about how your grant application is going to be judged. So you can address each of those items that's pointed out in the NOFO. Grant applications are to be reviewed by a merit review committee. That committee must contain at least 3 people. And it's reviewed based on need, capacity, and quality. And that's at a minimum. There can be many other items that your application will be reviewed on, but at a minimum, it's need, capacity, and quality. So what does that mean? Under need, you are to demonstrate that your proposal is in alignment with the grant program's purpose. The need identifies stakeholders, facts, and evidence that demonstrates that your proposal supports the grants program's purpose, addressing that need. Capacity covers the ability of an entity to execute the grant project according to the project requirements. Have you had experience in a program like this before? What does your organization look like? What does your team look like? What is your, again, your experience in something like this? That's capacity. And then quality entails the totality of features and characteristics of a service, project, or product that indicates its ability to satisfy the requirements of a grant program. So make sure this is obviously cut. This is just a small section of this part of the NOFO. Under this, there will be other key points that you can address individually as you're crafting your grant application. So really helpful tips in writing your grant application. It's so important that you're able to demonstrate your passion and your knowledge about the program. This is your program, it's your baby. You love it, you know it backwards and forwards. But when you're writing your grant application, it's really important to be cognizant of your use of jargon. So what does that mean? So when you're talking about something that's well known to you, it can be really easy to slip into language or verbiage that other people may not be familiar with. So if you start throwing in technical terms or acronyms or phrases that are well known within your organization, but maybe not well known outside of your organization, it's really important to provide definitions and explanations of those terms to make it clear to the reviewer what it is that's being discussed. That said, it's very important to be descriptive and to explain yourself clearly and thoroughly, and to assume the person that's reviewing your application knows absolutely nothing about your organization or the project. Let them in on any of the key details of your program. Remember to proofread and workshop your application with your team. Not only will this ensure that you've covered every detail, this will help you eliminate the possibility of spelling or grammatical errors, or maybe misphrasing something, leaving something out, slipping into jargon, things like that. So review it as a team, write multiple drafts, just make sure it's perfect. Remember to maintain objectivity when it comes to writing about your project. For example, someone can write a sentence like, "This is an amazing opportunity for our well-deserving community." A phrase like that can sometimes raise more questions than answers. How can one quantify amazing? And what evidence is there to support that the community in question is well-deserving? So for that reason, it's really important to back up what you're saying. You can cite sources, you can include facts and research and studies. You can provide examples of similar programs and their success. Just be sure that you are aware of the person who will be reading your grant application, and that you let them in on every detail. You explain terms or phrases that need to be explained. Spell out the acronyms. Just Review it thoroughly with your team, make sure it is pristine, perfect, and ready to go. So we talked about required documents. A really common misstep in the grant application process is when grantees fail to submit all the required documents, or they submit those documents unsigned. It's a really easy mistake that you can make. The NOFO will clearly identify all of the documentation that is to accompany your grant application. These are to be completed, signed, and submitted with your application to the location identified in Part D of the NOFO. Before submitting, make sure that you've double checked all your documents to make sure that they contain all the appropriate signatures. The program application is the portion of the application package where applicants will use a narrative to best describe how their intended project meets the requirements of the grant program. These questions are program related, and it is best to use as much detail as possible. Remember to refer to the application review criteria from the NOFO supplement to include any information that you need to and expand on your answers. The Uniform Grant application also needs to be completed for submission. The Uniform Grant application details your entity information, including contact details, your program title, and the estimated amount of funding. The Uniform Budget Template is a Microsoft Excel workbook to be completed based on your proposed project's financials. Please note that the budget template needs to align with the funding request stated in the program application and the Uniform Grant application. When you're completing the required budget template, you have the chance to demonstrate responsible spending and planning. The budget template is the backbone of your proposal, and detailed instructions are available on how to complete that budget template. We actually have a cartoon available on our resource site that talks about that budget. So we highly encourage you to check that out. And if you need to, reach out to the program contact that's identified in the NOFO to address any questions or confusion you may have about completing that budget. To ensure accuracy, you can find it helpful to obtain quotes for goods and services while you're completing your budget template. Acquiring quotes doesn't mean that you need to start spending funds before you even have them. Instead, it can just give you a better idea of what certain goods and services and items that you're going to need are going to cost, so that your budget can be as close to accurate as possible. So that's just a tip that we like to throw out there. Other forms that you need to include will be the mandatory disclosure and conflict of interest disclosures. These are both required to be included. The conflict of interest just stating that there is no potential or actual conflict of interest associated with your project. Mandatory disclosure, just ensuring that you will disclose any things of a legal nature that need to be addressed. Okie doke. Moving on. Another important item to address, so the NOFO will spell out every additional document that you need to submit with your grant application, but not every document that we just discussed is going to be the same across all grant programs. Application packages can require additional documents depending on the program. So that's why it's really, really important to thoroughly review that section of the NOFO, make sure you know where to find those documents, how to complete them, where they're supposed to go. So just know that not everything we just covered a minute ago is the same across all grant programs. It can vary from project to project. So once you've completed your application documents, you are pre-qualified, you are in the GATA portal. Now it's time to submit. Located within Section D of the NOFO supplement is where you're going to find that mode of submission. In this example, the application package will be submitted by the deadline outlined in the NOFO. This will be submitted in a Smartsheet form. There's a Smartsheet link available in the Notice of Funding Opportunity. The link to the application is embedded within the NOFO under Section D, Part 4, Submission Dates and Times. Applicants are able to hover over the link and click it to access the application. If clicking isn't an option, I mean, you can copy and paste it, but the link within the PDF of the NOFO is clickable and you should be able to access it right from there. So you'll be taken to that Smartsheet form for that grant application. You'll see at the very top, there's a box that you'll check confirming that you understand that you are to be pre-qualified by the application deadline. There's also a link located down below, which will take you to some resources where you can learn more about pre-qualification if you are at this stage and you realize, I didn't get my pre-qualification figured out yet. So next, you are going to enter your organization's legal name, your entity identification number, your EIN or taxpayer identification number or TIN or TIN. Here you will also provide that unique entity identifier, that UEI that's been provided by SAM.gov, the one that we discussed earlier. In the next section, you'll continue to enter your organizational information, including your organization's GATA ID. We learned earlier, potential applicants must register themselves and their organization in the GATA grantee portal. Once your registration is complete, you're assigned a GATA ID. That number can be found in the GATA portal. And then once you've entered your GATA ID, you're going to enter your organization's address, including city, county, and zip code. The next section is for your individual information. Here you'll list your first and last name, a phone number, and an email address. The final section is where we collect demographic information. A drop-down menu is available that you can choose from. Throughout these last few slides, we've seen a little star next to each of these items. The item with a star next to it, those fields are required. So you won't be able to submit the application unless you've completed those starred fields. If you prefer not to answer any of these questions, there is a selection at the bottom of that drop-down menu for prefer not to answer or NA for not applicable. So that's an option for you as well. So now it's time to upload those required document application materials. You'll need to click the boxes next to each of these items. It's a helpful little checklist to ensure that you've included everything. You'll see there's a star next to this section. This also serves as your final check to make sure that everything is included. Take a minute real quick, review everything, make sure you filled in every space, you signed every line. It's ready to go. Next is this box where your files will be uploaded, all those required documents. You can drag and drop them into this section, or you can click Browse Files if you wish to open up something through your computer. You should also know that you can upload up to 10 files in this section. Then, down at the bottom, there's this little piece here that says, send me a copy of my responses. If you want to, you can click this button and then you'll get an automated email right after you submit that will show all the information that you just entered into this form. You can keep that for your records if you need to. And then finally, don't forget to hit submit. Make sure that is before the deadline. Hit submit. Once the grant application window closes, once that deadline has passed, applications are processed through merit review. Part E of the NOFO demonstrates how the grants are going to be reviewed and on what criteria. So the Merit Review Committee, which is formed during the grant announcement in the application window, is to contain no fewer than 3 members. In addition to the strength of the application, in addition to that, reviewers are going to assess whether applicants are registered in GATA, whether they are pre-qualified by the time that grant application window closed. They're going to gauge whether the applicant matches the eligibility outlined in the NOFO and where the required documents have been signed and whether they've been included in the package. So the merit review process must be based entirely on the criteria outlined in the NOFO. This information is included in the NOFO to ensure transparency and to give applicants a full picture of their application, of how it's going to be assessed. Those who receive the highest scores are those applicants who have successfully demonstrated a full understanding of the grant program and what is required of them as a grantee. They will have produced a strong program narrative that paints a clear picture of their plan for the program, demonstrating their capacity to successfully implement and monitor the program, and those who have provided a detailed budget proposal. It's important to note that the merit review process can take months to complete. Some programs will collect, like I said, maybe a dozen applications. Some grant programs can collect hundreds. Because of this, the review process, this entails not only assessing the narrative, but also reviewing those other items like eligibility and pre-qualification. So this does take time. We fine-tooth comb things just to make sure that we've checked on everything. But once that review process is completed and awards have been determined, all applicants are notified, those who have been chosen for the award and those who have not. So keep an eye on that inbox. Rest assured, you will be kept up to date as decisions are made. So again, those who have been chosen for the award are contacted via email with a notice of state award. We call this a NOSA. They are instructed to access the GATA portal to accept the NOSA. And this is the first building block in the development of their eventual formal grant agreement. The grant agreement, as I said, it's a contractual agreement. It's between that person providing, that organization providing the funding, and the organization that is receiving the funding. The agreement outlines in detail all the parameters, requirements, and expectations on both the grantee and the grantor. The grant agreement contains everything that you need to know about your grant. It's built on the intent of the grant program, and it's informed by factors that emerge within the grant application review process. Evaluating risk, evaluating an organization's structure, their track record, all of these items help build the foundation of the grant agreement, because we will have identified and mitigated and thought through any potential weaknesses that there may be. So it's really, really important to thoroughly review the grant agreement as a team throughout your organization. Make sure everyone has a chance to review the grant agreement before you sign it, because it's going to tell you everything that will be expected of you. But also, once you do sign it and you have it, use it as a reference as you're completing your grant program. Between the notice of funding opportunity, the grant agreement, and the grant manager that will be assigned to you, and the grant help desk, you should have everything you need to know about your program. Any questions that you have should be answered, and you should be provided resources. So keep those items all together, know where to find them, know who to contact if you have questions. But again, know that it can take months to write your grant agreement, and just review it thoroughly once you have it. Okay, so when you decide to apply for a grant, do not wait until the last minute to get started. Grant applications can be lengthy and require documentation, detailed information, budget proposals, concrete plans that support the objective. You're going to want to draft these, review them, revise them. So don't wait till the last minute to submit. And another important thing to know, don't submit any application materials via email. They will not be accepted. Those grant applications and their required documents need to be submitted via the mode that is identified in the notice of funding opportunity. So only submit those applications where you are instructed to submit them in the NOFO. Let me see. Yes, keep in mind that hard deadline. That is a hard deadline. If it's 5:01, like I said, you will not be selected to advance through the merit review process. Your application will not be accepted. So start early, start in advance, and keep that deadline on your calendar. And finally, you'll see when you review NOFOs in the Apply for Funding page that some of these NOFOs have a technical assistance session. So what is that? This is an opportunity for potential applicants to jump on a WebEx and hear from that program contact. So the person who knows this grant program inside and out, who can tell you more about the history of it, things to keep in mind as you're completing your grant application. That person will be on the call to help answer questions. Our team will also be on that technical assistance call to talk about pre-qualification, to talk about the GATA portal, to talk about what you can expect as a grantee. There is a link to register for that technical assistance session in the notice of funding opportunity. But if you find that the technical assistance session already happened, we're all busy people, we all work, we just can't make it to a training in the middle of the day sometimes. Once that technical assistance session happens, the link to register is replaced by a link to a recording of that session. So you can still watch that technical assistance session even though you couldn't make it to the live one. We find these sessions to be really helpful because you'll hear from other applicants like yourselves who may have similar questions or even questions that you haven't thought of yet. So either plan to attend the live one if you can, and if you can't, definitely watch the recording. And if you have questions, contact the DCEO Grant Help Desk, that's us, or the contact that's identified in the NOFO. And definitely take advantage of some of the resources that our team offers. First, we offer virtual trainings for potential and current grantees. Like I said, the first Wednesday of the month, we take a closer look at pre-qualification and what it entails. Whether you've attended before or it's the first time, this training can serve as a great starting off point in your grant journey. On the third Wednesday of the month, like today, our team provides a training on one of a rotating list of topics. So today we talked about writing a grant application. Next month, we are going to talk about capital grants. The month after, we're going to talk about indirect cost rates. So these are little bits and pieces that are involved in the grant process. But each month we take a look at just one of those items to help better prepare you for your grant someday. We also have the grantee resources page, which houses our video training and resource library, which is a, it's a collection of little video tutorials that we've created. They're kind of engaging, they're fun, they spell out some of those items that I talked about: procurement, audits, line items, reporting, things like that. We have little cartoons focused on those items. So take the time, check those out. Also, with those recordings, you'll see a link to another resource down below. That's some supplementary information, sometimes PDFs, sometimes one-pagers. Definitely check out the video training and resources page. And then also you can check out the GATA resource site. This is through the Grant Accountability and Transparency Unit, GAT2. This page houses a lot of other important information about grants that you may want to review. And I believe those links will be provided in the chat that you can check out. If you ever have questions, you can always email us, ceo.granthelp@illinois.gov. The other thing I wanted to mention, the grantee resources page also tells you about our upcoming grant training. So like I said, next month we're talking capital grants. The month after that, we're talking indirect cost rates. We use the questions that we get on the help desk to inform the types of trainings that we put together. And so if we find that a lot of grantees are coming to us with the same type of question, we'll use that to help us build something new. What doesn't seem to be entirely clear? What do some people seem to be struggling with a little bit? We'll try to build something that helps address those questions. So sign up for our grantee training and resources invitation list. That link is in the chat, Grant Management Training Invitation List. Click on that. It's a short little form. You'll receive an email about all of our upcoming trainings. Visit the grantee resource page. It contains a lot of helpful information. If you have a whole afternoon, watch all those videos on the video training and resources page, and review the GATA resource site because there's a lot of helpful information in there as well. And that is all we have for you today. We have a few minutes. I see Caitlin has been just crushing it on the chat box, answering questions. I've been trying to follow along. Can an organization apply for more than one grant at a time? The NOFO will stipulate if an organization, so let's say you have an umbrella organization, or actually a better example, there's a grocery store grant that's going on. Sometimes the NOFO will say, if your company owns multiple grocery store locations, maybe you can apply for each of those locations under that same grant program. The NOFO will address that. So if you as an organization want to apply for 5 different types of grant programs all at once, and you've got the infrastructure and the bandwidth to do that, there's nothing saying that you can't apply for more than one grant at a time. But if it's one individual grant, the NOFO will address whether you can apply through different avenues for that one grant program. So just be sure that you're reviewing that notice of funding opportunity thoroughly. But if this grant is for like new park benches, this grant is for art supplies, this grant is for training, those are 3 different programs. There's nothing to say you can't apply for all 3 of those grants at the same time. All right, let's see. Will Amplifund be explained? As Caitlin mentioned, that's an ongoing process for all agencies. At this time, we don't have any Amplifund training planned through our team, but as things keep moving, once things are established, we will definitely put together some training and resources on that. All right. Yes, if you find a link that doesn't work, email us. We'll connect you with the right resource or the right person. Caitlin, if you want to let me know if these questions have all been addressed or if there's any that I still need to look at.
Working on the Amplifund ones now.
Okay, great. Thank you. Are all grants required to have letters of support? I've not seen that yet in some of the NOFOs. If the NOFO doesn't mention it, then you may want to reach out and ask. But if it is required, the NOFO will say that it is required. And if it's not, then you can assume that it's not part of the package. And if you just want to be 100% sure, you can contact that program contact in the NOFO. Certificate of good standing. Caitlin said that it can, if you get everything all figured out, it can be just like a day to get your certificate of good standing. Do you need to have your SAM account set up before you create your FEIN ID? Let me see, did we answer that one? That one I'm not sure about. Getting your SAM set up before your EIN. I know that SAM.gov will have its own requirements for getting registered. Actually, let me see if I can find it really quickly. I don't know if I'll be able to attach it, but let me go to SAM.gov real quick and just show you. All right, so I'm on SAM.gov. Here, this little help button, this is my best friend. So when I click help, I can go to this section. So the FSD, the Federal Service Desk, they have so many great resources pertaining to registration and things that you need to have in a row before you get started. So get started with your grant registration. There is a quick start guide to grant registration, which is a PDF document that will download. It's really quick. It's lots of good information, but it's nice and condensed in this format. Because it's PDF, I can't link it to you, but I can put this link in the chat, which will tell you where to go to find all that helpful information. So that'll tell you what you need to have in line to start your registration with SAM.gov. So check that out. Let's see. Caitlin answered, if you received your UEI from SAM.gov, are you registered? No. So getting your UEI and completing your registration are two different things. It's basically a two-part process. Once people receive that UEI, a lot of times they believe that it's all said and done, that they don't need to do anything else. But when we look them up in SAM.gov, we see that they aren't actually registered. So definitely make sure that you return to SAM.gov, complete that registration, take advantage of the resources that they provide. And once your registration is validated, you will receive an email. Or if SAM.gov has any trouble validating your information, they'll reach out to you to straighten some things out. Right. Okay. So I believe we got everything figured out. Okay. We have just another minute left before 10 o'clock. Go ahead and plug in those questions. If you have them in the chat box, we'll hang out for another minute. If you don't have any more questions, we will be sending a recording of this training to you via email along with the slide deck, either later on today or maybe early tomorrow. Just keep an eye on your inbox. Please join us for another training in the future. Join us for, forgive me, Tuesday afternoon. I failed to mention we have office hours every Tuesday from 2 to 3 p.m. It's informal. It's via WebEx. You can pop in, ask us any questions you might have. It's really informal. We'll try to either connect you with good resources or the right person. If you don't have questions, you're welcome to just sit in and listen. Sometimes you'll hear from people who have similar projects as you do. Maybe you'll learn something that you weren't expecting to. Join us for office hours. It's a really good opportunity. If there are no other questions, you're free to go ahead and log off. I hope you enjoy your Wednesday. We thank you very much for attending, and we'll see you next time. Where is the sign up for weekly email opportunities again? Give me just a second. Let me pop that back in for you. Just click the wrong thing. All right. Oh, there we go. Caitlin got it. So you can send a blank email to subscribe-omb-gata. Blank email. You'll automatically be put on their mailing list, and every Friday you'll receive an email with new grant opportunities. Thank you, Caitlin.